Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. So, one of the things I realized as I was compiling this week's episode is that because last week's episode got preempted by me getting sick, I just realized the Party City sign is missing the T. It got preempted by me getting sick. I do not have the coronavirus. I got tested. I'm fine. I just had really bad laryngitis and I could barely speak. So I put up that, greatest hits, episode last week. But one of the things that there was a lot that happened in the last week, which is weird considering everything shut down, so there's not much going on really. But there was one controversy I wanted to address. I'm going to put up another article about this later today, about how, about this a little bit more in depth, or just as in depth as this. But if you want to read it instead of listen, you can do that. Up on, my ecbu.com. So, I found out about this the same way a lot of people did. Talking about the removal of Gone with the Wind from HBO Max. I found out about it from social media. I've never woken up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night wondering, oh my god, where am I going to be able to watch Gone with the Wind right now? I've never, where I'm going to watch that movie is not something that, exists to, it's not something that really makes you question how I'm going to do it. I've never really thought about it too hard. Because it's one of those things that kind of gets like background radiation in your life. It's not something that I've ever actively sought out. It's not a movie that ever really interests me. I mean, I know it's got historical significance, and I know it's, all of that, but never really something that, I don't want to watch a 4-hour-long glorification of the Civil War. What the fuck? If I want to go and, watch something about the Civil War, I'll go to fucking Gettysburg and, walk around a battlefield or some shit. I've done that multiple times. I've taken tours of Gettysburg. I've done, that kind of stuff, but I've never, I don't know. The movie never really appealed to me as a concept. And part of the reason might be is because it was originally pitched to me by my mom as, oh, the dresses are really nice. My mom always really liked, my mom's very much, when she watches movies, she likes to talk about the costume design. She loves Titanic because of how historically accurate the costumes are. She likes Gone with the Wind for a similar reason. But if I want to watch a 3-hour and 58-minute long ode to slavery, never really, got the appeal of that to me. And on the day this happened, the day that it came off HBO Max, it was a day where other things were not to be leaving HBO Max. So, when I saw it, it didn't quite register that there was a reason behind why they were doing it, because I hadn't seen the article from the guy who directed 12 Years a Slave, the op-ed he did. I hadn't seen that, so it never really clicked that, there was a reason behind it besides just they had lost the rights, maybe, or they just didn't feel like they just wanted to take it off for whatever reason. Because, they announced they're doing a rotating slate of DC movies that same day, and, they were losing most of the DC Extended Universe, and I was like, that's kind of weird, considering one of the big selling points is that you can watch all this stuff here, and now you're just taking it away. So, I just saw that as another one of, those, oh, we lost another movie, okay, whatever. And I was thinking, it was an HBO movie or a TCM movie that was up for the month, and then at the end of the month it was going to be going away, and that wasn't the case. They were taking it off to add a disclaimer. Here's the thing. To use baseball terminology, this is an unforced error by Warner Brothers, because Warner Brothers is not shy to why they're taking this movie down. It's not permanent. They're doing it temporarily while they put a disclaimer on it. They want to put up a disclaimer that says, due to things in this movie, things in this movie are portrayed the way they were in 1938 when the movie came out. And because of that, it's unedited in its original form, and to edit it would be to, change. We need to keep this in because it allows us to show how the world was viewed at that time. And that's a great thing they do. Because, it's, if you look at, their Looney Tunes cartoons and all that stuff, they've been doing this since the early 2000s. So it's not that they shy away from this. They embrace it. They embrace the racist roots, and that sounds wrong, but they look at what happened in the past, and they're not afraid to be look, this was us. We've changed. We're not this anymore. but this is how things were. We as a society saw this and we saw it said okay. And that's not okay. And it wasn't okay then, it's not okay now. And that's the exact phrasing that Whoopi uses on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 3 in her little intro where she explains that. But that's the gist of what I wanted to do. They should have done that from the beginning, instead of doing it like once the launch happened, and that's where the issue comes in. Because now you have to pull it off to put it back on, and then it's like then you get like morons like Jack Prosobi, how the fuck you pronounce his name, and other right-wing commentators who are like, oh, you're erasing history, you're erasing the first black woman to win an Academy Award, and it's like, yeah, but like the Academy honored her, but they invited her. She had to sit in the back of the hotel. She was barely acknowledged. It was a whites-only hotel. She, like, and the role she played ended up being the name of a stereotypical archetype of character, who is just, the slave. Like, and then they didn't honor another black woman until 1990 when Whoopi Goldberg won. And if you want to go Best Supporting Actress, the next black woman to win Best Supporting Actress is Halle Berry in, like, 2003. And it's like, yeah, okay, I see what you're trying to say here. It's not making the point you think it is, though. But that's not the point. The point is they shouldn't have taken it down and put it back up. Because that was the issue that they did. Because it creates the controversy. Now, you've created a controversy where there was none. And there shouldn't have needed to be one. Because had they put this up in the beginning, and had they put that statement up in the beginning, no one's going to argue that, because there is no way to argue in their favor. In the favor of, in the favor of what they're doing. And meanwhile, all these morons who are like, oh, we're going to protest, we're going to buy Gone with the Wind. It's owned by Warner Brothers. If you want to protest something, and you think something's being censored actively, and you think they're going to try and make it harder for you to get it, don't buy it digitally. Like, because I've said it before, I don't like buying movies digitally. The only time I'll buy a movie digitally is if it's something that I want to watch right now, or it's digital only, or it's something like that, where it's like, for whatever reason, I'm not just going to wait to get the DVD, or it's harder to find the DVD or something like that, then I'll buy it digitally. Like, I bought, like, when we covered Youngblood Hawk years back, I bought that movie digitally, because it's it was hard to find. You can't find that movie on DVD anywhere. But the issue is when you buy it digitally, you're buying a license to watch the movie. And what I mean by that is you don't own the movie when you buy a movie digitally. So they can revoke that license. So say Warner Bros. Decides they don't want anyone watching that movie anymore, they're going to pull it out completely. And like, holy crap. They're going to pull it out completely, and then you won't be able to watch it anymore. But, like, if you buy it on VHS, if you buy it on DVD used, that's a way to do it, and you're still giving money. You're not giving money to Warner Bros. And if you really want to boycott, and you really want to be able to watch this movie, that's the way to do it, not, buy it digitally. Because it's like, basically all this did was it had the effect that Disney has when it vaults a movie. It's like, they announced that a movie's going back into a vault and sales spike because people want to buy it before it goes away. That's literally what happened. They announced, okay, movie's going away, and then everyone went out and bought it. And it's like, great, congratulations, you fell for a marketing ploy. So, I think that when we look back at the legacy of Gone with the Wind, it's not going to be its historical accuracy to what the Confederacy is. Because in the grand scheme of American history, this movie does a lot more damage than it does good. I'm talking very specifically about its portrayal of the Confederacy as morally equal to the Union. And they're not. They're not moral equivalents. It's like, it's not a great state. It was a failed state that would have fallen apart on its own anyway, had the Union not interceded to, try and reunite the country. But the issue is that there's no real, all this did was it created the illusion that the Civil War was something that it wasn't. And it starts the process of reducing the Civil War down to a 10th Amendment squabble. And for those of you outside the United States, our government's broken down in a very kind of unique way. Some will call it strange, but we have the Constitution. The Constitution is everything the federal government has purview over. The 10th Amendment says if it's not in the Constitution, then the states have purview over it. And at the time that the Civil War was fought, slavery was not directly addressed in the Constitution, so the federal government had no jurisdiction over it. So what they said was, the revisionist history is it's a states' rights issue. And the issue is it should be up to the states whether or not they want to own slaves. That was what, they did. So that's why you'll hear someone say, oh, they're fighting for states' rights. It's like, no, they're not. What state right are they fighting for? That's the question here. It's not the state right to set a liquor minimum age to buy liquor or to drive a car or anything like that. No, it's the right to own people as property. This movie did a lot of damage. It's really kind of not the epicenter, but if not the epicenter, it is pretty close to being the point where it's like, this is one of the first major pop culture things to really romanticize the antebellum South. And during Civil War South. But like it's dangerous in that regard, because not dangerous. Dangerous makes it sound like I'm being reactionary, but like it creates this false equivalency where why we have all of these statues of Confederate leaders, everything is that they're equal morally to, say, Grant or Lincoln. They're not. And I think that we need, when we look back in the future, and I'm talking like, not right now, not next week, I'm talking 50, 100 years from now, in film studies classes, Gone with the Wind is still going to be used. But Gone with the Wind is going to be used because it creates a historical context for the 20th century and the 21st century. Because it creates the illusion of what, it creates, not the illusion, what's the one I'm looking for? Hallucination, something like that. I really should start writing this down before I go. But it creates the let's use hallucination for lack of a better word. So it's a willful ignorance to the facts of what happened to keep things going the way it to keep things the way they wanted, to keep things looking like nothing bad happened, to not villainize the South for their role in the Civil War and their role in slavery. And that's not to say that the North was blameless either. The North did just as much in terms of slavery. It's just the North was like, hey, we're going to get rid of our slaves, and the South was like, the fuck you will, and then seceded. Now, so I think when we look back, it's going to be like, this was what people thought of the South from this era. And this was going into the 2000s, too. People looked at this as an accurate portrayal of the South. The movie is historical fiction, but it's looked at as a docudrama. People look at it as, this is what happened. This is a docudrama. And it's not what happened. And that's part of the problem. If people can't differentiate, a movie from real life. Especially if it's set in the past. People just take it at face value. So, I think that removing it from the zeitgeist altogether is not going to happen, in the same way we've kind of done that with Song of the South. Because Song of the South was known to be racist at the time it came out, and it was acknowledged to be racist at the time it came out, and the NAACP and other black civil rights groups at the time actively were boycotting and protesting the release of this movie, because it was known to be racist. It is so overtly racist, this movie, that Disney is kind of doing the right thing. Because it's not even like you can get the historical context of oh, we didn't know better at the time, or it's a one-off thing. No, it leans full on into every stereotype you can think of, and then some. And then I guess that's the movie that I have no problem with that. If that never gets released again, that's fine. But at the same time, Disney should also stop profiting from it. They should rebrand Splash Mountain away from Song of the South. But yeah, that's, if you read The Queens of Animation, which I just read that book, they talk about Song of the South and how much they knew this was a bad idea going into it. And, like, they hired a writer to make the movie less racist than it originally was. Because it was originally more racist, and then what came out happened. And that was the sanitized version. Because the first screenwriter was openly racist. Like, openly very racist. So, like, that's, I think, the key difference. And why people are like, oh, well, what about Song of the South? It's like, Song of the South, if you ever see someone advocating for the release of Song of the South, and it's a white person and they're a little bit weird, like, if you ever see, like, The Quartering or, like, anything like that, ever out there, like, oh, they should release Song of the South, it's, keep in mind that the movie is intentionally, with malice, very racist. And that's the point. There's no historical context to be gained from it. There's no, nothing, it's not, like, the difference between a movie like Gone with the Wind is that the racism is there, and we can look at it and we can say, like, oh, this was kind of acceptable at the time, because, like, it's not the entire focus of the movie, and it's like, we can look at, like, we can look at it as, like, a product of when it was made, and even so, the book was even written in, like, 1936 or some nonsense like that, not even all the way back in, not even, like, all the way back immediately post-Civil War. It was, in, like, 3 years before it came out. But if you look at what this is, if you look at what the difference is, it's pretty substantial. I don't know. I feel like they will put back On with the Wind if you need your fix of a romanticized version of what the South looked like in the post-Civil War era, or, during the Civil War. If you need that romanticized view, that will be available to you. Do not worry. If you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat and need to know where can I watch a very racist portrayal of slavery, designed to dehumanize black people, your fill will be there. I just think that in this moment right now, because of what we're living through and how we're kind of in that transition period, hopefully, from, willful ignorance of the past and a romanticization of what American history is to a more accurate portrayal of American history and a more historically accurate version that doesn't, turn us into turn the American people into heroes through every bad decision they make the entire way through. Maybe it's not quite as important historically as it will be in the future. So yeah. So we'll wrap up there for today. We have Superman on the next episode. We have we're going to talk about I'll put out a tweet of what movie we cover. I'm going to go to Walmart now and pick one out. And we'll be doing giveaways again. So until then, have a great rest of your week.